Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nikki Estes. I'm the Director of Presenting and Touring at South Arts. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you will enjoy the conversation. Also, we hope that it will provide some strategies for how we can better support artists and their work. I manage several grant programs at South Arts and know that funding is extremely important to the arts community. However, there are times when more meaningful support is needed. Because of the generous support of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, South Arts is able to provide more thoughtful and holistic support to dance companies such as staibdance. But first, a little bit more about South Arts. South Arts is a regional arts organization, and our mission is advancing Southern vitality through the arts. We provide programs and services in 9 states: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. We also have some national initiatives that reach beyond these 9 states. One of our strategic goals, which is very relevant to today's conversation, is to support the artistic and professional growth and success of artists in the South. This means helping Southern artists live and thrive in our region. Today, you will learn more about Momentum, which is a dance touring initiative for Southern dance companies. This initiative was created to address the clear absence of touring engagements by Southern dance companies in our region. The goals of the initiative are to increase touring capacity, to increase access and resources, as well as opportunities for these companies, and to increase awareness and recognition both within our region and beyond. We are very proud to be working with 5 modern dance and contemporary ballet companies based in the South. These companies include Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami, Helen Semino Dance in North Carolina, New Dialect in Nashville, staibdance in Atlanta, and Wydeman Davis Dance in Columbia, South Carolina. Throughout the 3-year initiative, there has been ongoing webinars, professional development, and mentoring, as well as peer conversations and financial support. Part of the program includes having these companies travel to Southern communities for performances and community engagement activities. Also, the companies will partner with the presenter to prep their work for these upcoming performances, which brings us to today's conversation. Momentum's tour prep residencies are an opportunity for the artists to have time, space, and access to presenters in their communities. Artists spend several days at the presenter's venue to prep their work for sharing and touring. The tour prep residency also offers the opportunity to engage the local community and explore ideas and questions with a presenter. Our first tour prep residency was between George Staib of staibdance and Rosemary Johnson at the Alabama Dance Council. To learn more about this residency and the outcomes, I'm going to hand things over to Andrea Snyder, who serves as the program advisor. Andrea is co-founder and co-director of American Dance Abroad. In the past, she has served as Dance USA's president and executive director. She's also served as the assistant director of the National Endowment for the Arts dance program and has had many roles in the dance field. Andrea?
Thank you very much, Nikki. It's a pleasure to have this conversation while we are in the midst of Momentum and the midst of the last 18 months of the pandemic, which has shifted some of the activities that we were planning to do, but it's made it even more wonderful for the 5 companies to align as a cohort and support each other through this period. So I would like to introduce our 2 interviewees, and we'll get started in this conversation. We'll have about 30 minutes for this dialogue, and there will be room for questions towards the end that Ivan will maneuver and make sure that we capture everything that anybody wants to know. So first we have Rosemary Johnson. She is the executive director of the Alabama Dance Council and the producer of the Alabama Dance Festival. She is a DTI presenter and, of course, as you know now, a residency host for Momentum's program. And we have George Staib, the artistic director of staibdance in Atlanta. He is on the faculty at Emory University, and he is a board member of Dance USA. Without further ado, I would like to jump in and ask you first, and we'll try and keep all these answers within a reasonable amount of time so we can get through as much as we can. Too many questions, not enough time. How did you two find each other? We know Momentum is the overarching and DTI is the overarching program, but how did you two connect up? Rosemary, do you want to give that a whirl?
Sure. Actually became aware of staibdance. It's been several years ago, but in working in curating artists and faculty for the Alabama Dance Festival, you know, I became aware of George and his work, and also connecting through the American Association. Well, it's the College Dance Association. Can't remember the exact title of it, but so I think we sort of found each other through other networks, and then as Momentum was established and the 5 companies were identified and selected for the program. And I, actually met with the artistic directors of each of the companies. I guess at the last Performing Arts Exchange that was in Orlando. That's been, maybe 3 years ago? I don't remember now. But so I really, tried to find out more about the work of each of these artists. And the Alabama Dance Council is a service organization for dance in the state of Alabama. And so I'm approaching it through that lens of, wanting to find out more about how I can support Southern artists in Alabama by working with Southern artists that are a part of this program.
Excellent. Thank you. Do you have anything to add, George, or did she cover the turf?
She did cover it, and the most meaningful connection, I mean, they were all really fantastic, was at PAE when we as the cohort were charged with doing the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable. It's like asking everybody there to the prom. And then they give you a few minutes of their time, and in your mind, you're just like, oh, this, and this, and this, and this, and we're going to have dinner, and then we're going to, and it was a great learning experience from meeting Rosemary, because you recognize it as a slow cultivation, not a slow, but a thoughtful one, to really solicit and create something that is meaningful and not just rolling into town to put on a show. So it was like asking her to the prom and getting we'll see, and then just continuing to massage it. So I think that was PAE for me, was the stake in the ground.
And I think that was in the fall of 2019 was the last one.
That's right. Yes.
Right. So let's move into the residency itself. What were the goals, if you can remember back to the beginning, or at least now, what were the goals that each of you had for the tour prep residency? George, would you like to start?
Sure, because with the tour prep residency, we had to work ready to hit the road, but we had never hit the road with it. So ultimately, pre-pandemic, it was assessing the needs of the company, how the work itself can grow, but also manipulating the construct so that it could be adaptable for proscenium setting / black box, or in the round. So those were the two things. And the prior impetus for all of these things was to embark on a Southern tour with DTI presenters. Unfortunately, it merged with Rosemary's programming, And some of the goals shifted post-pandemic, but I do believe that we were able to achieve what we hoped for and more, even with a different agenda.
So let me ask Rosemary about what goals you had hoped to achieve by offering this tour prep residency to George. And then I'd like to dig in a little deeper as to what you accomplished. And we'll go back to George for that. So Rosemary, did you have specific goals in mind for the company?
Well,
Or for the organization?
my primary goal, of course, was to support George
Mhm.
and meeting his needs at that particular time in the development of this work and preparing it for touring. I also had an additional goal because I knew that we were planning to present staibdance at our next dance festival. So they will be performing at the January Alabama Dance Festival. So it was an opportunity to begin thinking about or talking about and possibly even having some meetings with potential residency partners that would participate in staibdance's residency in January. So they'll be doing a 7-day residency in January leading up to the performances. So, and the other goal that was I've never had the opportunity to explore was working with the venue. We do not own our venue. We rent, but I have a venue partnership with the Alice Stevens Center at UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham. And so it was an opportunity for their technical staff and administrative staff, marketing people, so forth, to really work with a company in depth. I mean, normally I would have a planning visit with the artistic director. They would get a tour of the venue, talk with the technical director, and kind of, try to troubleshoot some things that may come up at the festival in their load in at the festival. Well, this gave us the luxury of having, 5 days in the venue and really being able to work closely with the artist to tailor the performance at that we would be presenting in January, as well as helping George in preparing it for touring. So that was key. And we also were able to make connections. I was focusing primarily on the dance community for the tour prep residency. And so we had a nice little audience for preview of selected sections of the work. And so the dance community was getting a chance to meet George and get an introduction to his work. And the hope is we would incorporate some of these dancers into the piece in January.
So maybe we should jump right in a little bit. And George, can you briefly describe the piece that you worked on and that will be performed in January? And if I'm not mistaken, it's actually going to Philadelphia very soon.
That's right. Yeah. The piece is called Fence. And ultimately, when Momentum rolled around, my intention was to bring back an older work called Wish Dust. However, because of the world and because of Rosemary's generous offer to follow through with the idea of Fence and produce it in conjunction with NDP, we stayed the course with our most recent piece. And this is a work that can be done in the round or in a proscenium setting. And we actually prefer more intimate audiences. I think the dance among the cohort in particular, maybe Dimensions is the anomaly here, but I think the work works better with not such a huge house like 3,000, 1,000. It just gets too diluted. So this work stems from an experience in Iran where I grew up, and my K through 12 campus, there was a murder of two teenage American boys by two Muslims. And I only identify the nationality simply because it's not a narrative telling of that. It is a flipping of the script. And that when I relocated to the United States, there was a lot of anti-Iran sentiment by Americans. So it was just totally flipped. And it's not about that either. But we move to the South and we see these same sort of things cyclically, and we're 40 years away from this event in Iran. So it is a sort of an examination of the sensation of power. When do you choose to give it away? What takes it? What feeds you power? And the intention is to look at it like, is it this or this, where the script could easily go back and forth depending on the viewer's perspective. So that is really intentional. And because we had this opportunity in Alabama to truly examine it, we were able to dig in more and make things even a little bit more mysterious, I would say. Is she captive or is she free? So it just depends on how you're looking at where you're seated, where your mind is. I don't know if that's an okay summary, but yeah.
That's great. Is it quickly? Is it a 1 hour? Is it a?
Yeah, it's a 50. There's a video projection at the end. I would say it's about 57 minutes, top to bottom,
Okay.
and it is an evening length work. Yeah.
Evening length work. Okay. So describe to me a little bit, or for the audience, what. By virtue of being part of Momentum and DTI for Rosemary, has your perspective changed in the way that you shape the work for George because of the residency and the Momentum experience? Rosemary, for DTI and being part of this cohort, has your programming thinking process changed at all? Have you instituted different ways to look at for art, for dance, or to investigate how dance sits in your community? So that's a loaded, I mean, not loaded, but it's a dense question. So George, if you don't mind to keep going, if you can just talk about your experience as a Momentum cohort member and the tour residency and what it's doing for your work.
Would you like me to start? Oh.
Yes, please.
Okay, so what it is doing, it's leveling it with other art forms. And I do think working at Emory, where we present as well, there is that dilemma for somebody who is a presenter or a producer of absorbing something, throwing it out into the world, and then walking away from it, thereby rendering some of these major productions as somewhat disposable. So with Momentum, what I had learned is that all the accolades and all the vetting that can come from South Arts or NIFA is one thing, that it doesn't matter if you are, well, we'll take Hamilton and Wicked out of the picture, but if you are anything that doesn't necessarily have that kind of mass appeal, the vetting is great. You still have to wave your arms and you still have to hope somebody opens the door. And there was a lot of arrogance, I will admit, from many dance companies or peers in this world. Well, by virtue of the fact that I've made this piece, they should be begging me to do this. And it was Momentum that brought me face to face with that. And admittedly, I thought that's how the world worked. When you would see the Galeems and the Batshevas and all these things kind of strolling into a situation, but that's actually false. And I think it feels false, and that is collaborative from the very beginning, because if it is a company such as ours, where somebody in Wyoming, let's say, doesn't know us, that the onus is on me as well to kind of cultivate the earth there and generate sort of interest and generate community. And this is the beautiful thing that Rosemary did. She opened many doors and people could walk through or not, but then the responsibility fell on us. And it was a welcomed responsibility to look at the community. Oh, we could fit in here and you might be interested in this, as opposed to, like I said earlier, rolling in, doing a show and then piecing out. That serves nobody. And the chance to cut your teeth and let the baby teeth fall out and then work on it a little bit more does elevate it significantly, because I know dance is expensive, for both presenter and choreographer. So the chance to make sure things feel as close to appropriate as possible, like a soft opening of a restaurant or Broadway teasing out a show in Boston, it's better for everybody. And I do think this model is addictive. It really, to stroll in and ask people to spend money on a major show and you're just trying it out for the first time on the premiere, it does no one any good. So
All right, great, point
Yeah.
well taken. Rosemary, in terms of the relationship with as a DTI presenter, now that you've been doing it for a while, how has that influenced your programming, the way that you go looking for dance, how you think about the aesthetics for your festival and for your community?
Well, one of the goals of DTI, which actually the presenters came up with their own value statement, if you will, but it's about building relationships and recognizing that you have the presenter, you have the artist, and you have possibly an agent involved, or a company manager who is doing that work, and that it really is an equal partnership between all of these perspectives, and that in order to build those relationships, it's having conversations in a different way. It's getting away from the transactional nature of booking artists and then really exploring the work, getting to know the artist, finding out what they are, what their goals are for their work, how they like to work in community, and then matching that with the presenters' vision of what their dance programming would be about and how they want dance artists to work in community. And so it really is a marriage of all of those different perspectives. And so there's a planning visit that became a part of the DTI model where the artistic director comes into the community and there's conversations that happen, and you know, designing a residency, being very intentional about designing a residency. And the goal is not necessarily to put butts in seats. It's about building relationships within that presenter's community through by partnering with the artists and partnering with the community partners that they all have established a relationship with. Maybe it's finding a new partnership. Yeah.
Right. And it's terrific to hear that the DTI presenters have taken and look at the value of relationship building and seeing dance in a different way rather than just simply transactional. I think that's really healthy. You both have raised the word and the concept of community. And for each of you, what is your perspective about community engagement? Where does that fit into your vision for your work, in your case, George, and vision for your season, your festival, Rosemary? George, do you mind starting, since Rosemary just had a few
Not
words?
at all. I think that has shifted likewise over the last 3 months, because we see a lot of models with that, where Alvin Ailey rolls into town and someone will teach a masterclass, and that happens. And so there's a following that way. But then for mid-level companies, for me in particular, community engagement is steeped less towards getting as many dancers as possible into the seats. It is more a chance to open the eyes and doors to other components of our creative world around us, whether it's cooking, museums, political science departments at a college, to demystify contemporary dance, because a lot of times it's like, I didn't get it, I didn't get it. However, if there's engagement beforehand where you prime the mind, almost like massaging kale, it can receive things a little bit differently, because we're simply asking, join this, let's converse, let's move together, have an open discussion. And then this will be, here's the work, think a little bit like this, but then you open the door. So for me, it has a lot to do with that, and bridging gaps and connecting what could be disparate ideologies or practices, whether it's capoeira and sociology and dance, but it is possible. And I think we see that in our world a lot. So for me, that is community engagement, putting lots of different people in the same room at the same time.
Good. And Rosemary, I'm going to go back to you a little bit, but Rosemary, what's the perspective from your side of the coin about community engagement as the presenter?
Well, first, let me say, I think that means different things to different presenters, and that it may be tied up with an institution's work in that community. So I'm just speaking for myself. I can only speak for myself and what it means to me. And, you know, I have, as a presenter, I have always worked with artists who were interested in doing work in the community. I have never booked an artist that was not interested in doing that. So, you know, I'm coming from that lens, working through that lens, because to me, you know, people can experience arts in the community. They don't have to come to the theater to experience the power and impact of the arts. And so a lot of times you have to take the arts to where the people are. So to me, that's what, and I call that working in community. I don't think of it as community engagement. I think of it as, what can I do to support the arts and giving people access and opportunity to experience the arts in whatever way they want to come to the table to have that experience. And my goal is not necessarily to get people, you know, to come to the performances.
Was there something in the tour prep residency for either one of you that was different in the way you approached community engagement? Was there something new or unusual in let's not use engagement, in terms of working in the community that you were open to doing or that had not happened before? For either one of you, for George?
Yeah, I'll let George go.
Yeah, I do believe there was, because Rosemary had established an opportunity to meet with some dance folks in Birmingham, and somebody from Tuscaloosa came. And we were able to converse, not specifically about the work, but of just sort of issues in dance, issues in sharing and in communication. And then I had never had this experience aside from one ACDA, where it was a privilege to walk audiences through different segments of the performance and then talk again afterwards. And then this whole event was followed up with a master class, like at the Alabama Ballet. And so it was a whole different demographic, which was really great. It was like spreading icing a little. So that, and reaching into different pockets, felt new to me, because I'm more accustomed to seeing the same people.
Great. Rosemary, anything to add?
Well, I'm, you know, trying to come at it from, you know, I see myself as serving two constituencies. One is the dance community in Alabama, because I'm a service organization, but the other is the community of Birmingham at large. And so we had the opportunity to do both. at this tour prep residency, but we're just beginning to do the work in connecting with the greater Birmingham community. But it's an opportunity for me to connect with the Iranian community in Birmingham. And it's really, really interesting how all these little connections just kind of pop up in conversations that I'm having with people for another totally different reason. And so that was interesting. And we're going to do more of that next month. But also, I feel like to support the dance community, the opportunity to work with George and his creative process is really, really important for our dance community to connect with that. Because we're trying to grow the demographic of young professional dance artists in our state and giving them an opportunity to envision how they could do their work, stay in Alabama instead of having to leave Alabama and go do a career somewhere else and then maybe come back and teach. We need a stronger demographic of professional artists, dance artists in Alabama, and we need to grow that demographic. And so this was an opportunity, especially with the workshop that George did after the preview performance. They really it was a 3-hour workshop, and it was, they were just eating it up. They were there, they were ready to work. And I remember George saying, well, these dancers are great. This is so much fun to work. He was inspired by their
so open.
their technical ability as well as their openness to try the things that he was showing them. So
good. So just a few more questions before we open it up to anyone who'd like to ask one. Well, what are some of the takeaways for each of you that you'd like to share with others who may be moving in this direction or who have the ability or the opportunity to go through a prep residency of this kind? What would you share with them? George?
Now this is conjecture simply because it's I'm not sure if this is the outcome, but hopefully it is, and you can sense this. It is by kind of tearing down or filling in the moat that's around an organization or a prestigious venue, and recognizing that it is porous and open to the other artists that can stroll in and do a show there. However, knowing that this sort of monolith of whatever venue or sort of service organization there is, it enriches the community immediately around it. And I think it keeps, the takeaway was, wow, there's a vibrant dance community in Birmingham. And of course I knew that, but then to be steeped in it and feel it and sense it was pretty dramatic. And then I have another thing to say about New York, but I don't know if that answers this question, but it absolutely does kind of, there's a wealth sharing that is extraordinary inside of it. It humanizes the company, the venue, the presenter, and I'm not saying it dumbs anything down. It just keeps it really charged.
Rosemary, we should make sure that we define that this was a 1-week residency, correct? Okay, so in a week, this is all that you got accomplished. Rosemary, something, a takeaway that you think would be worth sharing?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me was just having the resources to support an artist in the development of their work. it's not often that, I mean, normally I'm pouring all of my resources into the festival and what happens at the festival and the residency that happens at the festival and the performance at the festival. And this was a deeper dive into working with an artist to support their work. So I feel like that that is, from my perspective as a presenter, is just so rewarding and so enriching. And I think because of that, the impact on our audiences in January will be deeper and more enriching for them as well.
Mhm. Well, we only have about a few more minutes. So I know, George, I was just going to say, is there anything that I haven't asked you or that you are thinking about that hadn't come up in the conversation that you'd like to share before we open the floor? So to
Yeah,
speak?
I would like to add just one thing about, particularly this goes into the technical and production aspect of being housed in a venue. And this is a on Rialto Center here in Atlanta that had been wanting to bring Vertigo Dance Company from Israel for many, many years. But they're like, oh, their sets won't fit into our stage. And there are a lot of things that seemingly could be preclusive. We went to the Alice Stevens Center not knowing about the projection, not knowing about certain things. And I felt like the give and take and the collaborative efforts designed to make something work and fly based on what was available outstretched anything that my imagination could have done. And so I think there is also incredible camaraderie because these folks weren't just hanging a light, they're figuring out with us, like, well, if we want to do the projection, how can it happen? And I think that there's a lot of creative energy poured into making sure that all parameters were met on one level, but also all ideas were heard. And I feel in the end, nothing was compromised. So I do think that this time was also so much better. It's not like moving into a new house and hoping your furniture fits into it. It's moving into this house and seeing what sort of offer or opportunities lie inside of it. And that is another fantastic thing. It was really beautiful to let go and let Adam at ASC and his team, like, hey, well, let's figure this out. And that was sensational because it was done in such good spirit too. So
I think your metaphors are just so clear and wonderful. Keep them coming. They're terrific.
So,
Rosemary, do you have anything that I haven't asked that, or you want to make sure the audience knows about this residency and its impact for you?
Well, I'm glad George brought up the Alice Stevens Center production team there, and that's I feel very fortunate to have that relationship with the Alice Stevens Center, and it truly is a presenting partnership, and it happens to be our 25th year in January for both the dance festival and the Alice Stevens Center. And so
Congratulations.
George's performance is a part of that celebration.
Oh boy, we
And,
all wish we could get down there and see it all.
So we're very excited about it. And they were thrilled to be able to work with the company in this way because they don't have the opportunity to do that very often.
I'm sure that was very
important. Move it in, get it ready, curtain, lights, curtain, here we go.
Yeah.
This was a much more creative time for both the venue personnel as well as the artists.
And luxurious to some degree.
Very
so
luxurious.
luxurious.
Very
And don't we wish everything was like that? All
Yes.
was
So
like
true.
that. So I'm going to turn this back over to Nikki with my thanks to the two of you for sharing so honestly and deeply your thoughts about this the tour prep residency. It sounds like it was a hugely successful marriage. And I wish you lots of good luck going forward as you present the work, and your festival Rosemary. I hope it's a great success. So Nikki, back to you.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions to come in, and then I'll wrap things up. There was a question about responsibilities related to the tour prep residency, and this was a happy marriage. And so I think we'd love to hear more about, specifically the question that came in was, what technical resources did staibdance bring to the residency? Personnel, equipment, who was responsible for providing the resources? I think one of the things that we've heard is that this worked out really well, and it'd be interesting to hear how you negotiated those types of responsibilities and this type of partnership.
There were a lot of communication that happened between our managing director and our lighting designer well before we got there. So our lighting guy knew what there was to work with, and then he supplemented by bringing instruments from here, either renting or transporting. And Rosemary likewise was very generous in helping us suss out the most efficient way to get the instruments that we needed. Likewise, the same thing with Marley. That was collaborative. We thought, well, maybe we don't need it, but maybe we do. And then we figured that out. So ultimately, we took our sound person, our lighting designer, our projection person with us, who again collaborated with Alice Stevens' personnel to come up with, I thought we were not going to do projection at all, but Alice Stevens people figured something out. It was fantastic. And now it's an integral part of the work once again. So having all of that done beforehand, I mean, our lighting designer had so much free time because they were figuring stuff out, and so much had been addressed earlier, and it really made it so smooth. So I'd say those three people, along with our company and me, but technically, yes, we share, it was 50-50, I would say, in terms of contributions.
Thank you. Rosemary, anything to add?
Well, because we do not own a venue, and we use multiple venues throughout the festival, but you know, it has always been the Alabama Dance Council's responsibility that if the venue doesn't have equipment that the artist needs, then it is our responsibility to figure out a way to provide that. So in this case, it was a projector. And so, you know, that was our role in terms of who's responsible for that. And it falls on us as the presenter and not the venue. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to piggyback, it is not an all or nothing. So if a thing didn't happen, like there's this look that we had when we premiered the piece, that was really beautiful. I loved it. But once again, we figured out a way to make it a fraction of what it was, and it was still kind of satisfied the urge. So there's really nothing preclusive about like, well, if you don't have that spotlight, we're not coming. So it's not like
That's great to hear that you can be flexible and that you have a partner that can be supportive as well. There's a comment that came in that I think will be a great way to end today's conversation. There was a blog in the Americans for the Arts website, and there was a quote that I'd like to read, and someone is asking if they might hear from all three of you how you might respond to this definition, because we've talked so much today about community engagement. The quote is, engagement describes an active, two-way process in which one party motivates another to get involved or take action, and both parties experience change. Mutual activity and involvement are the keys to community engagement. Can I ask all three of you to maybe respond to that quote about engagement and the active participation that it requires? We'll start with, go ahead, Rosemary.
Yeah, I can go first. I think this is an accurate way to look at the process, because, I think what's really important in the two-way or in our case, I would call it even a three-way process where you've got, staibdance, you've got me as the presenter, and then you have the community partner in whatever their involvement would be. I try to take myself out of the picture in terms of when I bring the artist in to meet with a community partner to talk about a residency opportunity. I like for the artist to talk about their work. I want the community partner to talk about their, who they serve and what some of their programs are and how are they reaching their constituents in the community. And inevitably, something is going to align at that point. So I think not going in with a preconceived idea of what's going to happen, who has the power, gets back to that idea of power again. And I really think that the most exciting residency things that we've done have been when I remove myself from the picture, other than bringing the two together and then watching the magic happen, because they're going to start communicating with each other and finding a way to connect. And it's about building relationships. So, and then everybody feels good about what happens with the activity that they design together.
Thank you, George. Do you want to respond to that
I
definition?
I would. Yeah. And it's also, despite Rosemary's modesty in terms of pulling herself away, there's still value, of course, a ton of value, because it's almost like co-parenting. Because I could think Lexington came up in the chat, but I could be like, we're coming to Lexington, this is what we're doing. But it would be really relevant and important to hear, well, that's not going to fly here, you're not going to do that, you're not going to. And so that's like good cop, bad cop. It's like being blind to what is really around you, and therefore nothing is going to sort of merge and work well. So there is incredible, I would say, reliance on the person in the host city to convey, as Rosemary would, like, well, these are people, you're not going to get a lot in August, you'll get more here. And that's gold, because we can talk ourselves up in our ability to reach people as much as we want, but until the boots are on the ground or you're hearing from the center, it's pointless. So it is definitely a two-way thing, and there's really no inclination to be arrogant, like, well, you haven't had really good blah blah blah, and I'm here to show you that. And that's just silly, I think. So
Great. Andrea, do you have anything to add?
I'd like to underscore the brilliance of communication as part of in community engagement and the relationship building, which is absolutely necessary. And I think ultimately it's whatever the change is, in the quote, I think it's about growth for the community to better understand the art form, better understand the issue, look at something in a new way, feel something that they hadn't felt before. I always think of it as my brain moving in a different way when I see something that, or I'm part of a community activity that I haven't experienced. And you really want the community to get to that point where they are experiencing something new, thinking differently, and the change is happening within. So it all starts with communication and relationship building, and it goes from there. And the openness that each side brings to each other, to the effort, makes it all the more worthwhile. So there.
Thank you. Well, sadly, we have run out of time. I want to thank George, Rosemary, and Andrea, and also special thanks to all those that were able to join us. I hope that today's conversation offered something new, whether it was gaining a deeper understanding of an artist's work, or perhaps how an organization can support artists beyond the stage. If you want to learn more about staibdance, any of the Momentum Dance Companies, or South Arts Grants programs, please visit our website at southarts.org. Also, this recording will be available on our website next week. So please encourage your peers to take a look at it. And this is goodbye for now. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.